Hello everyone, Hyper here. So this morning I woke up to a ping in my Discord that linked to a Wowhead post about an interview that Blizzard had where they revealed the Death Knight Covenant abilities for Shadowlands. Naturally, super excited to read these and share my thoughts on them, so let's get started. The first one we have is the Night Fae. This is an instant ability, 30-yard range, 45-second cooldown. Most of these are going to be either 45-second cooldown ranging to like a minute and a half cooldown. So the targeted ground begins to wilt, dealing an amount of nature damage over 10 seconds to the target within the area. Drain power from each enemy within the area, reducing their damage done by 10% and increasing your strength by a certain amount for 10 seconds. So the numbers are obviously not finalized. I'm not going to mention those or talk about those, but just talk about the design of the ability. So this first one seems like it's targeted for AoE, maybe for tanks, but it does seem like predominantly a Mythic Plus ability. Second Covenant here for Kyrian, we have Shackle the Unworthy, instant 30-yard range, 1 minute cooldown. Admonish your target for their past transgressions, reducing the damage they deal to you by 5% and dealing arcane damage over 14 seconds. Shackle the Unworthy's cooldown is reduced by 4 seconds when you damage the affected enemy with a rune spending attack. So this is actually the ability that we saw on the showroom floor at BlizzCon. A few of the streamers played around with this. Super boring in my opinion. Again, we have an ability that reduces the damage that the target deals to you. So for tanks, single target, this might be very good. If it deals a significant amount of damage, it might be good for DPS as well. But the nice part of this is that you get CDR whenever you spend runes against the target. So 4 seconds per rune spent, at least that's how it worked on the testing that they did at BlizzCon. So whenever you would use an ability that uses 2 runes, you would get 8-second CDR on it. So you would have almost permanent uptime on this ability. And again, if the damage numbers are tuned well, this might be good. If they're not, it's going to be kind of boring. And as a DPS, this is definitely just going to be a passive damaging ability. But as a tank, if you're able to keep a 5% DR, it can be kind of interesting, I suppose. But this strikes me as the blood go-to ability for raid tanking. So next we have the Venthyr Covenant. This is the vampire guys, and they have Swarming Mist. Instant cast, 1 minute cooldown. A heavy mist surrounds you for 8 seconds, increasing your avoidance by 311, dealing shadow damage every 1 second to enemies within 10 yards. For each enemy damaged, you gain 3 runic power. So, this can be the interesting one, depending on how it's coded and how it will actually work. So, the avoidance, I don't really care about that. It deals shadow damage every 1 second. Depending on how much shadow damage it is, it might be good or it might be a little underwhelming, like we saw with one of our unholy talents this expansion. But the interesting part for me is for each enemy damaged, you gain 3 runic power. If this works the way I think it works, where every time it ticks an enemy, you gain 3 runic power, then it's going to be super good. If it's a one-time thing, whenever you damage a new unique enemy and you gain 3 runic power, then it's not going to be as good, because on single target it's going to lose a ton of value. And in AoE you're going to get a ton of runic power up front, but then nothing really after that. So obviously for this, Breath of Sindragosa immediately comes into mind, because if you get runic power every time it deals damage, so let's say on single target, you have this ability of for 8 seconds, it deals damage every 1 second, so you get 8 ticks. 8 ticks times 3 runic power, that's basically like having an extra arcane torrent. Which, like we know, for Frost DKs, that little amount of runic power can make or break a Breath of Sindragosa, because it kind of gives you a little bit of more leeway to extend it further by having runes come back. And depending on how they rework the talent system and what talents they buff and nerf, this could also be kind of good for Unholy if Dark Arbiter makes a comeback, or Summon Gargoyle, I suppose. So if both of those talents, Breath of Sindragosa and Summon Gargoyle, end up being good, and this ability gives us runic power every time it ticks damage against an enemy, then this is going to be absolutely nuts for Frost DK in particular, and it has the potential to be good for Unholy DK. And it's going to be decent on single target, and then in any cleave and AoE, it's going to be absolutely insane. It's going to be kind of like having Memory of Lucid Dream, but next expansion, whenever essences are gone. And then the last one here is for the Necrolord Covenant, which is Abomination's Limb. Instant 1.5 minute cooldown. Sprout an additional limb for 8 seconds, dealing shadow damage every 2 seconds to the nearest enemy. If the enemy is farther than 5 yards from you, they are pulled to your location. Immediately PvP. It's essentially a 1.5 minute damaging cooldown that allows you to stick to your target. Now this has to have some sort of internal cooldown. I don't think it's just going to grip every time something is out of range, although there is a possibility since it only ticks every 2 seconds. So you have a possibility of up to 4 grips. So think about fighting like a mage, let's say an arcane mage, because they are probably the most mobile range I can think of for PvP. You pop this ability, they blink away, they get grip back. They blink away again. If they're the closest target, if the healer is not nearby, they get grip back again. If they temporal displacement, they get grip back again. While this ability lasts, you will be able to stick to your target no matter what. I think back in WoD, rogues had a similar ability, but instead of, or actually might have been in Legion, sub-rogues, but instead of gripping the target to you every time you use Shadow Strike, you would Shadow Step to your target within your cooldowns. So essentially for the duration of your cooldown, you're able to stick to a target no matter what. For PvE, I don't see this as being that beneficial. Obviously, I can talk about damage tuning all day long. If it's tuned high as far as the damage it deals, it might be good in PvE. If not, I believe this will be the go-to PvP ability. So what are my overall thoughts on these 4 Covenant abilities? Outside of the Venthyr one for Breath of Sindragosa and the Necrolord one for PvP, the Night Fae and Kyrian one don't interest me that much. The Night Fae might be good for Mythic Plus, and the Kyrian seems like it will be the go-to for Blood DKs for raid tanking. The design of these is a little bit lackluster, but overall I think if they tune them correctly and they don't force you into going a specific covenant based on these abilities alone, then it might be good. One thing that I'm a little bit disappointed about is that all these abilities are so different that if you go with a raid covenant, like if I'm a Frost DK and I primarily raid, I will probably go with the Venthyr covenant. But then if I go into PvP, I will never have access to Abomination's Limb unless I reroll covenants, which, as they mentioned at BlizzCon, is not something they want you doing all the time. So this means that whatever covenant you choose, you will probably end up being a little bit suboptimal in other parts of the game. But I really hope there's going to be some sort of workaround for this, because I don't want to reroll covenants just because I'm trying to push high PvP rating and raid at the same time. So we'll see how this works out in the future. But I'm excited to see the covenant abilities for other classes that they might reveal in the near future. And I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on these, so make sure to leave them in the comment section below, or you can join my Discord and chat with me there. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.